Grand Seiko meets Rolex. That was my first thoughts when I saw this one. It's the limited edition AD15 from Wise Watches. And since they made this one to celebrate their 15th anniversary, it is a little bit special, as it combines an intricate, highly textured 24-karat gold-filled dial with a compact, slim, polished 38mm 904L steel case. Not 316L, which isn't exactly something you'd expect an average Microbrand to kick out. But Wise isn't exactly your average Microbrand, as they're one of the few in the Microbrand game who have consistently impressed me, and we'll see if they do it again. Now, before we get too far, I should mention that Wise provided this watch and they're not asking for it back, hence the promotional tag at the beginning. That, and just because of the intricate, really reflective nature of this dial, this one was a little bit harder to photograph than others. That said, let's talk specs. For this one, you're looking at a watch that is 38mm wide with a lug-to-lug of 44. So it's a nice compact platform for just about anyone. And especially with a total thickness of 10mm. And that's 10mm with both the exhibition case back and this beautiful tall box-cut sapphire crystal. Which means the case and everything leading up to that crystal is even thinner. And a lot of this is really thanks to the watch's use of a dateless Miyota 9000 movement. There, you're going to have a higher 28,800 beat rate and about a 42-hour power reserve. But best of all, it's a fairly thin movement. Now, of course, there are going to be some trade-offs for all this as well, such as the lack of a screw-down crown and only 50 meters of water resistance. But since we are looking at a dress watch, those are perfectly acceptable here. And more importantly, all of this adds up to a very comfortable experience on the wrist, at least once the straps are broken in. You see, the AD15 comes with two 20mm quick-release straps. One that's a bit more of a brown alligator, and one that's a black ostrich. And both of these are fitted to the curvature of the case, making them just not your average straps. And they both seem to be made with good leather, but they are a little bit stiff at first. One good day on the wrist, however, and they should be broken in. And at that point, that's where this thin and sleek polished case really shines. Pun intended. As this isn't exactly the best watch for someone that wants something that's a bit low-key. It's way too much flash for that. But for those that like a little bit of attention, it is quite comfortable and is quite the presence. For a watch like this, I think 38mm is a great size, as it seems to hit the sweet spot in between presence and comfort. Now, with this one, the dial is obviously going to be the main attraction, as that's really what's going to draw your attention. But I gotta say, the case is no slouch either. It's compact with a nice rounded curvature to the sides. It's 904L steel, and it's one that's just polished to the nines. I mean, everything here is polished. The top, the sides, the bezel, the case back. I think the only thing that's brushed here is the buckle on the strap. In fact, at first glance, you might even miss the fine beveled edge running down each side, since it's polish next to polish, but it is there. And overall, the case just looks fantastic. But of course, the flip side to all of this is those fine micro scratches, smudges, and fingerprints that will develop over time. So if you're OCD about your watch looking good, that's always problematic. For me, ideally a good balance of brushed and polished surfaces is better, especially something with a brushed side. But I do fully understand why Wise went this route, and especially for an anniversary dress watch, since one of the advantages of using 904L steel is that it takes on a better polish. So they might as well take advantage of that. Now, turning the watch over, you can also see the very curved nature of its undercarriage, where the case was thinned out and curved out just to make it a little bit more lightweight on the wrist. And that's just another finer detail I want to point out before getting to the dial. And as a side note here, there's not a lot of clearance between the spring bar and the inside of the lugs. So some of your thicker aftermarket straps out there might have issues fitting in. Luckily though, the two straps it comes with are great. Anyway, let's talk about the dial here. And this is a 24-karat gold-filled dial with this very interesting, intricate pattern etched into it. And since it's gold, it's obviously going to be a bit reflective. At first glance, I think the pattern looked a little bit like a circuit board, but you may see something else here. And it's basically this repeated patched pattern etched into it with alternating angles. So depending on the angle of the light, each of those rotated sets will catch the light slightly differently. Moving outward, you hit the applied silver framed indices, filled with a ton of white luminous paint, as well as this grooved circular border framing the entire thing, and that's right before you hit the chapter ring. And as you can tell with these macro shots, Wise did a fantastic job on the finishing of the indices in the hands, making this a watch that I think really punches above its weight class in terms of price. I've seen similar watches from bigger brands have rougher hands and indices. Now, the design here is captivating and mesmerizing, and even though it is a bit reflective, I never really had an issue wearing it with glare. I think the pattern here just winds up dispersing the light a bit before reflecting it, so it's not really focused on any specific area. However, contrast is still a bit of an issue here, and I think you can tell that with the gold applied logo at the top. Sometimes it's there, and other times it's barely noticeable. The hands and the indices, however, are a different story. Since they have a silver polish, they do come through more easily. But you still won't necessarily have the same contrast as a different design, one with, say, a simple black or a simple white dial. Even if it wasn't a light reflection issue, there's just a lot going on here. And in lower lit conditions, the silver of the hands do become a little bit harder to make out. But luckily, that's where the LUME comes in. And this is another area where the AD15 excels at, which really isn't surprising if you know anything about Wise and LUME, as they're one of the few brands that have consistently knocked it out of the park when it comes to LUME. And this fully loomed Hitman is a perfect example of that. I haven't seen anything better or stronger. Now, with the AD15, due to the narrower hands and indices, it's not exceptionally bright at first, at least compared to some of Wise's other offerings, but it is very sharp and well defined. And it winds up staying that way for a while. In my comparison test, I didn't even bother to include the Vostok I usually do. It would just get blown away. Instead, over at the right, you still have a Seiko diver, and to the left of the AD15, we have two of Wise's own divers. You have the regular 88, which I've already reviewed, and that's one of my kings of LUME. And then next to that is a newer bronze version. And from watching it, you can tell that the AD15 easily outpaces the Seiko, and it does keep up with the other two divers from Wise for quite a bit before fading out. So it's not exactly king of LUME worthy, like, say, Wise's other divers, but it is close, and that means it should outperform almost everything else out there. And for a dress watch, that's just completely nuts. Overall, I think it's a great looking design that strikes a good balance between form and function. And as flashy as it is, I thought the sharply defined hands and indices were easy to make out, while the very symmetrical and intricate dial kept things interesting. Which does bring up another point, and that's that some people might look at this and see the aggressive hands and indices. And I think when you combine that with just the sheer massive amount of LUME, that some might argue that this is more of a sports watch than a dress watch. But for me, there's a little bit of wiggle room in those categories. And the fact that this is so polished, that you have the gold dial and the 50 meters of water resistance, I think makes this definitely more something in the dress watch category. But I could see someone argue the other way, so each their own. And either way, as someone who doesn't wear a suit that often and doesn't necessarily need a fully dedicated dress watch, I actually appreciate the slightly more aggressive nature to the design, as it makes it something you can wear more casually as well, and that goes for the LUME too. In terms of price, on their website it looks like they're listing it at $1,300 US, but it is currently selling for $770, which is what it's been sold for since they announced it, so not exactly sure when that $1,300 kicks in. But with regard to value, this is one of those watches that makes me think I should just stop talking about value in these videos, because what exactly do you compare this to? Because if you're looking at dress watches, there are a ton of them out there, but how many of them have an intricate dial quite like this? To me, this is something you usually find more from Seiko with their special editions, or maybe even a Grand Seiko. And that's not even counting the 24 karat gold part of it. And as for the case, 904L steel is something that's typically associated with Rolex. Now, there are a few other brands that occasionally use it, like Ball, but those are still twice as much. And that's of course assuming you're actually interested in 904L steel, because remember, just because Rolex uses it, doesn't necessarily mean it's better than anything else out there. there's nothing wrong with 316. With watches, 904 just lets them get a better, higher polish. But again, the other side of that is of course scratches and fingerprints. So again, I kind of feel like I'm always saying this in these videos, but the value argument here is tricky. From what I've seen here and from Wise's other offerings, they offer a premium watch experience. And at that price, I feel it's worth it. But I can't necessarily give you a really logical comparison for it. Bottom line, another fantastic watch from Wise that's blown me away. I think this is the fourth watch of theirs I've reviewed, and every single one of them has exceeded my expectations. Their attention to detail, their unique design twists, their first-rate packaging, and of course their lume. And in particular here with this one, it was the comfort, the lume, and just the intricate nature of the dial. I mean, it is one thing to see it in pictures and a complete other to actually get it in your hands and see just how it plays with the light. Now, over the years, I've frequently said that watch collecting is more of a journey than a destination. And part of that is that you never really know about something until you wear it on your wrist for a bit. As over the years, there have been multiple times I wound up really liking something I never thought I would. And this is one of those watches. I honestly don't like gold watches. I think they're just a little bit too flashy and just not me. I just don't like them. And I don't even like two-tone watches that have gold center links and the rest is steel. In fact, these days, unless I'm going somewhere nice, I don't even wear my gold wedding ring anymore. After the last couple really hot Texas summers, I've switched to a silicone one. Anyway, the point is that when I saw this 24 karat gold-filled dial, I thought it was interesting, but I didn't think it would be me. That it wouldn't be something I'd want to wear after the review. But I was actually surprised at how often over this last month that I wound up grabbing it just to wear it. And that's even beyond just getting good wrist time for the review. In Texas, we've had some freakishly cold weather. So that combined with the holidays made this a perfect watch to wear over the last month. And with its slim profile, it's a good looking watch that easily fits under a jacket, a sweater, or even a hoodie. And I've really enjoyed my time with it. Partly for the comfort, but I also wound up liking the look of it. So this has shown me that while I don't like gold cases, stainless with a gold dial, perfectly fine. And I know that doesn't really make sense, but the thing is your tastes don't always have to make sense. And it's kind of like I have no problem with bronze cases either. And I think that goes to show that part of the watch collecting journey is maybe learning a few things about yourself as well. Anyway, as usual, let me know your thoughts on this one down below. And if you can think of another watch that might do it better. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe, just hit some button down below, watch the entire thing a second time, something. I'm Shane, this is Relative Time, and I'll see you next time.